Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dissecting Dance, Kicking It with Ran podcast, the podcast that opens up discussions about topics in dance. The goal of this podcast is to allow dancers and non-dancers alike to think about dance from new perspectives, as well as leaving room for discussion. Enjoy the show!
Everybody, welcome to Dissecting Dance, Kicking It with Ren podcast. Thank you all for being here. It's been a very long time since I've last recorded anything, and I would like to first apologize for that because there's been a lot going on, as you all probably know, and it's stressful and very busy. At this point, I am just trying to get episodes when I can. So yeah, thank you all for being here. The break's been very busy, but good, I guess, and I'm trying to keep up with the every other Thursday schedule for as long as I possibly can. So I'm doing my best, people. I'm doing my best. Now that I've gotten that little apology out of the way, I want to get into what I'm going to be talking about today. So I have decided that I want to do more fun content. A lot of my content is based on a lot of emotional, just hard-hitting, kind of heavy, spreading awareness type content, and I would really like to do some more media content. I think the only media content that I've done so far is when I had Kayla on the show and we reviewed the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. For this episode, this is another media review. Like how Jenna Marbles does it. Media review. Like that, essentially. That's the goal. I was supposed to film this back in January, but like I said, life got busy and very stressful. I am filming this in June, therefore it may not be relevant. Sorry, it's July. Gosh, I'm filming this in July. It's not relevant anymore, but I still wanted to talk about it. We're going to be talking about Dancing with the Stars Live Tour 2025, which is very fun. I went to 2 shows back in January. This is not about the TV show. This is just about the live tour. With that, Dancing with the Stars Tour 2025. Now, I do want to start off with some disclaimers before we start, because I know if anyone from the fan base is listening in, I know that the fan base can get pretty parasocial at times. I just want to get that out of the way. Obviously, the show is way over by now. I think the show ended in April, but if you don't want to have this show spoiled for you, don't listen to this episode. If you want to watch it on YouTube at your own time, now is not the time. Now, because Dancing with the Stars is a pretty active young fan base at this point, I want to mention that when I critique, I am not speaking on the character of the performers. I don't know them in real life, so I can't speak about who they are. I only know their public persona. For this moment in time, I am strictly speaking about their performance. There is a little segment that I'm going to talk about at the end about just the media or the public view. That I'll get a little bit into it, but I'm not going to mention it until the very end of the episode. I am only speaking about their performance quality. That's it. Do not come at me if I don't like their dancing or something. So these performers, aside from Steven, are all professional dancers. All of them. They all do Dancing with the Stars. They all get paid. They got paid to do the tour. These are professionals. So therefore, because they're professionals and they're getting paid, my standards for them are going to be higher. I have a lot of critiques, and from this point forward, I will be approaching this as if I am a critic, not a fan. You may catch some like me being a fan moments. I added some of that in there, but when it comes to critiques, I am looking at this from a critical standpoint, and like I said, I'm gonna try and put my feelings aside. Last thing, I do want to give credit where credit is deserved to the Dancing with the Stars Reddit page. All of these opinions are my own, but I do want to say that a lot of these, or not a lot, actually it's only like a couple points that I made, but there are a few that I didn't notice until a Redditor spotted it, and I was like, yeah, I should mention this on the podcast. So thank you, Reddit, for that. So that being said, what is Dancing with the Stars? The show is a reality TV show on ABC that first aired on June 1st, 2005. 20 years, that's crazy. As of February 2025, there are currently 33 seasons of the show, and I think there's about to be 34 next year. The premise of the show is for celebrities to be invited onto the show and learn how to do ballroom dance, being paired with a professional. It's a competition show, and each pair competes to win the Mirror Ball Trophy. So essentially, a celebrity who has no ballroom dance experience comes onto Dancing with the Stars, gets paired with a professional, and wada bing, wada boom. You compete to see who's the best, essentially. The Dancing with the Stars live tour is a tour done off-season, where the pros and celebrity guests from the past season tour around the United States, stopping at locations across the board. These shows are concert style and very over the top, and we are able to see the true potential of the professional dancers from the show, something that is difficult to show on the TV show. And I believe the only celebrities eligible to be on the tour are ones that have made, I think, the finale. But if you've watched the most recent season, you know that everyone from the semifinals got moved to the finals. I'll cover that in an episode about Dancing with the Stars, but that's not on my priority list right now. I also want to give credit to where credit is due to the choreographers of the show, who choreographed and directed Mandy Moore. No, not the one from Tangled, because fun fact, there are apparently two of them. One of them voiced Rapunzel in Tangled, and one of them is closely affiliated with Dancing with the Stars. Robert Roldan, Jenna Johnson, Val Shmerkovsky, Jonathan Redavid, Karen Forcano, and Ricardo Vega. Now, something I want to note here, and this is like my first critique, just coming from being a dancer. So the program for this show was $25. They charged us for a program, which is crazy. So the only reason I had these names was because I ended up purchasing the program, but the programs, they didn't have the names of the dances and who choreographed what dance. So all that I have is a list of choreographers and directors and the fact that they contributed somehow to the show. So that, I'm just saying, as a concert dancer, like, this is like one of my big hunches with commercial dance in general, is that they very rarely give credit where credit is due, which is absurd. I would have liked the program to have each individual dance and, hey, this is the name of the dance, this is the music, this is the choreographer, and this is who danced in it. Like, that's all I want, right? Like, you gotta give credit to whoever. I will say that they did it on Instagram. They did a recording session of most of the dances, and they put some of them up on Instagram. But in my eyes, that still isn't properly crediting them, since it's not accessible. Like, what if you don't have an Instagram account? I'm sure a lot of people do, but why wasn't there a QR code that everyone could just scan for a program? And I know that if you're like not in the dance realm, it's hard to kind of care about that, but especially with AI and everything, like, I don't take this kind of stuff lightly. You need to be crediting people for the work that they've done. Even if Mandy Moore did choreograph all the dances, for these critiques especially, I wish that I could point out specific dances and give critiques on the specific dances. However, that isn't as possible because I don't know who choreographed it. And anyways, tangent aside, who performed? So all the pros that were here full-time: Riley, Brandon, Alan, Britt, Daniela, Pasha, Gleb, Ezra, and Emma. The celebrities who were there the whole time: Steven Nezarazic, who was the male gymnast who won a medal in gymnastics. I also want to add that one of the shows I went to, they didn't have any additional guests. The second show I went to did. The second show I went to, Jenna Johnson and Joey Graziday were there. And other notable information, I attended 2 shows in January. Cool. Great. I'm glad that we established that. Now, that being said, now that I've gotten like the credits out of the way, let's get into the positives. Let's talk about what I really liked. Overall, I enjoyed the variety of pairings. We got to see what the chemistry looked like in various combinations. I believe there was a quick step with Riley and Pasha, not a pairing that you would expect, and I found it very interesting seeing how they danced together. And it wasn't just about couples who were in a relationship, and that's something that you can appreciate. And when I think about pairings, specifically, I don't know why, but Riley's pairing stuck out to me. So I remember Riley and Pasha's duet. I also remember Riley and Gleb's duet, Riley and Alan's duet. That's just what I remember. I don't know why it's like that. And I think Emma and Alan had something at the end, but it might have been Britt. I honestly don't remember. And going off of that, overall, the partner work was phenomenal. Obviously, for those of you who went to the show, Pasha and Daniela were the biggest standouts to me regarding partnering and just, obviously, I think because they're married, they work very well together in the dance realm, or at least it's how they met, was in the dance realm, and then they got married and then had a kid after that. You can tell, like, if you look up their video, you can tell that their ballroom skill is at a completely different caliber in comparison to the other pros, just based on the choreography of their salsa alone. I'm gonna touch on this a little later, but the way that they laid out the show is that it was a group dance of a style, and then it turned into a duet of that style, and then there was some giant transition. And you can tell that in that salsa dance, you could tell that the difficulty of the rest of the group was not the same as what Pasha and Danielle were doing. So that's something that I noticed. They're very, very talented. As you all know, I'm a contemporary dancer. I can't give specific critiques on that. All I can do is kind of give my overall judgment. I did write in my notes Riley and Gleb's pairing. I thought it was interesting. A lot of people thought their pairing was really good. I have a problem with the age gap. And yes, I am absolutely ageist, just based on my experiences alone. Something else that stood out to me, I noticed, I'm also going to loop back to this, but right now I'm going to be talking about it in a positive way, that the incorporation of social media trends from this past season. If you have kept up with the show, you may have noticed, if you have kept up with Dancing with the Stars and etc., you probably will understand a lot of the social media trends that have come out of this season of Dancing with the Stars. I mean, social media-wise, that was really what made the show stand out. There were a lot of references, and some of them were pretty good. Like the mention of Alan and the donkey costume. I thought that was funny. And Alona, like we love Alona. What a queen. Like her references were also pretty great too. So that was good. Those were some of the specific good things that I've noticed. Now, this is what I'm most excited to talk about, is I have Britt in big bold letters. Britt, the icon that she is. Because let me tell you, Dancing with the Stars really does her dirty with how good she is. Just how good she is. Bro is so freaking talented. And let me tell you why. What really does it for me is her performance quality. I mean, out of this world. And it's not even, it's not the smile, but it's her focus. When she looks at something, she looks at it. And she does it in a very, I don't want to say focused, but you know what she's looking at. And the moment she walks on stage, all eyes go to her. It's really cool. But Britt has a background in commercial dance. I believe there was an interview where she shared more specifics regarding that, but she was actually, I don't know if you all have seen High School Musical. I hope that you all have, because that's an iconic set of movies. But for all 3 movies, Britt was a background dancer. And she was out here like straight up dancing. She didn't start out in ballroom. She started out in the commercial dance realm with jazz. She has that. And I feel like in commercial dance, this is why, and dancers, I know you hear it all the time. This is why it's so important to train in multiple dance styles. I don't care what kind of dancer you are. It's ideal to have multiple styles inside of, like, in your toolbox. And here's the thing, right? The way that I view different styles of dance is like how I view language. The way that dance originated was about communication, and, you know, it was never meant to be competitive, but that's like my perception on dance as a whole, is that dance was used as means to communicate and still is even now. And each style of dance has its, like, each of it is like its own language. Dances, hopefully you understand. For example, my body speaks ballet, contemporary, and modern. Those are the languages that my body speaks, and my style of dance reflects that, for example. For someone like Daniela, and by the way, I do want to say that Daniela is top notch, one of the, like, if one of the best, if not the best ballroom dancer on the show. Let me set that straight. But her language is like Latin dance, and you can tell that her body's just very, you can tell that that's ingrained in her, and that's so cool. But for Brit, it's just, I think what we're lacking is that sense of stylistic. She was able to pull from her prior dance background, should I say, and was able to still keep that and keep all those qualities and incorporate that into ballroom. I hope that's making sense. But yeah, Brit hasn't, I mentioned her background in just being a professional commercial dancer and getting all these opportunities on Disney already, and then starting ballroom later, and then being on Dancing with the Stars. Like, it really is such a cool trope for her, and I love that. But I do want to backtrack a little bit to the language thing, because I think I emphasized jazz for Brit. I think she also speaks to hip-hop language. She had to have had ballet technique. She had to. But she also, because just based on how I watch her dance alone. But an example of a time when Brit really stood out to me was before the contemporary, it was like right before the contemporary dance, and she walked out wearing this magnificent pink cape. I mean, it was incredible. I was like, oh my gosh, like, Brit, where was this? Seriously, like, Brit is like, and she was if you couldn't tell, she was my favorite, but she's just so, like, love her. That was my being a fan moment. But from, like, a dancer standpoint, I mean, Brit is just an amazing, talented, like, go off, Brit. Love you, girl. Brit was the first person I wanted to shout out. The other person I wanted to shout out is Jenna. As you all know, maybe, Jenna was amazing. She also has some exquisite performance quality as well. I think when they performed in the second show and Jenna were on stage at the same time, this was for the contemporary piece too, and my gosh, it was magical. Like, genuine, like, and Jenna's contemporary background definitely came out there, and she's the same way. I think she also had some dance training. Like, her and Brit have very similar qualities. And people aren't talking about that enough. That, like, Jenna's very similar, where, like, although she grew up in ballroom dance, I think she also has experience in other styles from when she was a kid. So her body also speaks multiple languages in that sense. That definitely has ballet and contemporary experience. And Jenna, I would love to speak with you further on your dance background. She's not going to listen to this. Same with you, Brit. Let's talk. Yeah, it's never going to happen, but I figured I'd throw it out there anyways. Now, there's another thing I wanted to throw out there, and one of which, I don't know how I know this, but I think Val and Jenna choreographed a 5-person dance. I don't remember. I think it was Emma and Brit were in it, possibly. I might be wrong. Alan was definitely in it, and Pasha was in it. But there was another guy that was also in it, and I don't remember who that is, so I apologize. But it was a waltz, and I wanted to bring up the same-sex pairing. There were multiple instances where I believe it was in that dance where I saw, like, same-sex pairings happen. Like, there was a transition from, like, a man-woman pair to man-man pairing. And I was like, period, I love that for you. Let's do it. And I think the ballroom community overall has gotten better about allowing same-sex pairings or whatever sex you want or whatever gender you want pairings. But I did want to emphasize that I noticed it throughout the show and I really liked it, obviously. Those were like the positive standouts for me. And one of the things I want to also mention, this is the second to last thing I believe, is that there was one specific portion in the show where they had audience members come up on stage. I thought that was funny. And then they had them all like dance and stuff. And I wanted to bring up that, let me just get into what it was. So I think it was right after intermission and the women, the female women dancers, they were on stage the whole time. But the male dancers would come and they would pull someone from the audience and dance with them. And I personally am very glad that they pulled, and I don't know if they did this intentionally, but we mentioned for the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders episode, we mentioned that you have to keep your dancers safe. And one of the ways to protect the female dancers is to like not allow any kind of physical contact whatsoever from anybody. And I'm mentioning this because the female dancers weren't anywhere near any of the guests. They were standing off to the side or they were demonstrating a movement. I thought that was hilarious. You'll have to watch it on YouTube. But basically, one of the dancers would participate, like they would give everyone a move. Like the male dancers, they would pick one person to bring on stage with them. And then they would essentially perform for the audience. And that was really funny. And I loved every second of it. Now, getting back to the protection thing, I really liked that the female dancers weren't anywhere near any of who was on stage. Because, just for safety reasons, like women are naturally they're more in danger than the men are. So I really appreciated that the men were the ones who went into the audience and did that. And I'll get more into this later when I talk more subjectively. I already am talking subjectively. Let me get that out of the way. Now, the other thing this is the last positive that I have. The last big positive that I have is that overall, and let me just give you guys a little education real quick. When it comes to ballroom dancing, from what I've seen online, like I said, I don't have a background in it. I took a couple classes. That's it. But I'm just trying to use my judgment the best I can here. That in a typical ballroom dance competition, etc., typically the audience is on all four sides. So there's a dance floor, and then typically there's an audience on all four sides. And that kind of comes from the like if you think about like Beauty and the Beast or any sort of or if you watched Frozen and you think about like Elsa's coronation day and how there were people on all four sides watching people dance and such. Like that's like the history of ballroom, is that there's an audience on all four sides and you can see every part of everybody. But I think all the choreographers, they really handled that proscenium setting well. And if you don't know what a proscenium setting is, it's your typical dance concert venue. So if you've ever watched The Nutcracker, you know that there's a stage and there's an audience, and the audience can only see one side of. So the stage is in 4 boxes. Everyone's watching one side of the stage. If that makes sense. That's what a proscenium theater is. Or at the Kennedy Center even. If you still like going to shows there. Yeah, I'm probably going to take that part out. But I think the choreographers did a great job with adjusting their choreography to face a certain, to face one direction. And I do want to add that on Dancing with the Stars, the audience is on 3 sides. So it's easier to cater to audiences. It's a little easier in that way, I'm assuming, for the choreographers. So I just wanted to bring up that when you have to, and I've had to think about this a few times, that in a choreographic setting, having to change, pulling a dance and having to change it from, for example, one angle to 4 angles. It's not as easy as you think. Or even going from 4 to 1, because you also have to consider the fact that the audience can only see you from one side. So you instantly have to like cater to that one side, if that makes sense. The choreographers did a really good job with that. Now this is where people are going to get angry. I'm going to talk a bit about the negatives. Like what I've observed that I didn't necessarily like. So some of the unison pieces were a little sloppy, and I'm talking about groups that had more than 5 people. So I believe there were 9 professional dancers in total. Anywhere from like 5 to 9, I noticed that the group pieces across the board were not necessarily together. They could have used more time to clean and polish. Now, that being said, I am aware that they only had about 2 weeks to learn the show. I believe once the finale hit, they were in rehearsal for 2 weeks, and then they had break for Christmas, I believe, and then they were on tour. It would have been nice if, since the show was in high demand, and I can say relatively in confidence they had over 100 shows, that they needed more rehearsal time. And needing more rehearsal time is not a bad thing. The more rehearsals you can get, the better, and that is something I firmly believe in. But I wanted to add that it's weird that this choreography was relatively, like, some of it was good. Like, some of the choreography, like the contemporary piece, even though unison doesn't really matter that much, must have been from all the excitement, I don't really know. But the choreography looks pretty clean on the TV show, so I don't know what happened there. Maybe it was just a comfortable space for them, and they were able to adjust quicker to it, but they definitely could have used more practice. And I don't mean to shout any people out for this. I'm sorry. There was like one, and I'm sorry, I'm only saying this because this moment stands out. I'm sure it wasn't just him. But when you correct one person, it can be applied to everybody. Let's just get that out of the way. I think because he was added onto the tour later, because he was in such high demand, they added him on as a full-time person. And I think from all the excitement, it's easy to get excited over that. But, I'm not denying his dance ability. It's just about being on time and staying in unison. That's it. Ezra, you're great. Another negative is that the show felt redundant. The first show that I went to, there were only 9 pros and 1 celebrity guest.
Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know that I have an Instagram account now. My Instagram is Dissecting Dance with no punctuation, no spaces, no caps, none of that, just Dissecting Dance. You can follow me on Instagram there for the most recent updates on episode releases. Thanks everyone, now back to the show.
But what's happening with that is that you are starting to see the same dancers over and over and over again for 90 minutes straight, and it's annoying. Essentially what happened is that I got bored of seeing the same people over and over again. Yeah, with 9 pros and 1 celebrity guest. Especially because he wasn't dancing very much. It just felt redundant because of that. I was almost starting to get bored of seeing them. Which you shouldn't, because they're celebrities and you're there to see them and such. But that was something that kind of got to me a little bit, is that there weren't nearly enough professional dancers in the main cast. However, I do want to add that adding Jenna and Joey into the Philly show already made the second show that I went to, it already added so much. It added so much energy and so much variety, where they would just pop in and you're like, oh cool, love to see it. And it didn't feel so redundant when the other dancers were going in and out of the wings and the stage, and just adding those 2 people, and Joey was pretty involved in the show too. Adding those additional dancers made it more, made the entire show across the board more interesting. And it also helped with some of the comedy bits. That helped a lot. The other thing I noticed, and this is more of a critique, is that they need to work on taking up the whole stage in the full group numbers. Now, with the original cast of 9 people, and I can't explain what it is. I can't explain it. but the stage with all, it might have, in all honesty, it might have been their dancing. They might have needed to dance bigger, but they seemed to struggle with taking up the whole stage. That being said, if you compare it to like a ballet and someone's doing like a variation on stage, like they can take up the whole space and the stage doesn't feel so big. But the problem was that even with a giant prop on stage and 9 dancers, it still felt like they weren't exactly taking up any space. And it, like I said, it could be due to the fact that they weren't dancing big enough, or they might have literally not had enough space. And that is something that needs to be addressed. But I will say, when Joey and Jenna were in the show, I didn't have that issue. So that's like another thing that I observed too. I also think that the prop didn't exactly help them. And the prop, it was just a large prop with like TV screens on it, and it added a little more dimension. Like there was like a layer of stairs and such that the pros could walk up and down. It helped for like a little bit, but it like didn't particularly do much for them. It wasn't needed. Like the prop was cool, but it wasn't as needed as they thought it was. So that being said, without Joey and Jenna there, the stage felt empty. And I'm also going to include Steven. Without Joey, Jenna, and Steven there, the stage just felt empty. And I was like, where is everybody? It felt like people were missing. So maybe if for next year, if there aren't any celebrity guests or any additional people, you need to encourage, and I'm saying this to Britt because she's captain, etc., or whoever, that the dancing has to be like the facial expressions aren't enough. You can give off the big facials, like go off, but ultimately that's not enough. Those expressions, it needs to come out in your dancing, not necessarily in your face. So that's my advice, my unsolicited advice, just from a contemporary standpoint. I know, it really does feel like I'm Abby Lee on Dancing with the Stars. My goodness. Now, putting that aside, I mentioned earlier the amount of social media references from this past season, and I thought the first couple were great. The first few were funny. The Alona Mar stuff, the mentions of what happened last season, the TikTok dances that arose from it. However, I thought that there was a point where it got to be too much. Like the references, they basically tapped into every single reference that they could. There were a few from like Whitney and Danny. There were a few references from those two, but they couldn't add them because they were in the show. So it got to be too much, is what I'm saying. Like I'm trying to think of examples, but it's hard to remember. I did take notes. But, there were I specifically mentioned the Alona Mar and the Alan donkey thing was pretty funny. And I think there was also a mention, I don't remember Reginald? I think that was the guy. I thought that was kind of funny. But there was also a moment where they were kind of teasing the celebrities a little bit in the, and this is just me being like, me knowing that I wouldn't like this. Maybe the celebrities think it's funny. I don't know. But my overall, I didn't like the gags at the celebrities regarding their dancing or whatever. I just didn't like it. And that was in the one where they were all in school and wearing those school uniforms. That was a reference that I was like, that's a little mean. I guess if the celebrities are okay with it, then okay, but also that's a little rude. There was a point where I was like, okay, let's stop with. Let's not. Let's not. There was a moment that I liked when Ezra told all the fans on Instagram to shine their flashlights for Riley and Alan's dance. And I thought that was cute, but that's not a social media reference. It's called the Secret Pro Society script. And this is kind of hypocritical to what I was saying. That was the only part of the Secret Pro Society that I didn't like. Otherwise, it was pretty funny. Now, that being said, that script was pretty funny, but regarding scripted content, that should have been it. And I want to acknowledge that Emma and Steven did a really decent job being host and co-host for the show. And I know that they do a cajillion shows, or they did a cajillion shows, like once a day or even twice a day, depending on the day. But what was really annoying was just how scripted all the conversations were on the show. And that just goes to show with like the media and stuff, you have to censor yourself, essentially. That was something I did not like at all. I was like, especially when I went to go the second time, I was like, I remember hearing something like this before. And in moments like that too, like it felt redundant. I was a little bored from seeing the same people over and over again, essentially. I mean, you can tell that Emma absolutely loves being host, and I don't want to take that away from her or Steven. But cater a little bit more to your audience. Like I think they did something in Philly, because I think that was when I think Philly just won the playoffs, and that was wild. I'll get to that at the end. So they did they did a special thing for that. But it would have been nice if, the dialogue among the pros wasn't so scripted, because then it would feel more authentic. I just didn't like that. So those were all the main negative points. I'm just going to point out some other observations and maybe some more critiques, if I so desire. Now, this review is based on the tour and the tour alone. I would like to add that over time, especially on Dancing with the Stars, the audience shifted from, there's a significant shift from an older audience to a younger one. And there was a time when they disclosed that their audience base was younger. And I thought they were referring to people my age, but I think they were actually talking about children, just based on the way that the tour has developed and changed, and the show even. How that all changed over the years. They've catered their dancing to more friendly audiences, which, I watched as a kid, and it didn't really affect me that much. It's okay to have a little sexy dancing at times. And they mentioned, are you ready for some sexy dancing? But the only sexy dancing I noticed was like Daniela and Pasha and Riley and Gleb, and I already told you how I felt about that pairing. But I just want to say that mirroring the TV show, the choreography felt more juvenile in this show than it had in the past. Older seasons and shows had more tension and chemistry, and I think that also comes from just the fact that there was a lot more drama in past shows, like among the pros. I don't know if that's actually the case. I don't know. I listened to one podcast episode about it. That was wild. But a long time ago, when I first watched the show, the choreography was more suited for older audiences, and I think that just made it better. In all honesty, it doesn't... And these are all grown adults. They all consented to be here. The pros choreographed the dances, and I do want to say that for minors, they did make it more child-friendly. That's the exception. If you're a minor, don't give them sexy dances. That's weird. That's creepy, etc. So I do want to add that, some of the dances did have some maturity. But especially the skits that they did, it felt super juvenile, and as I mentioned, they played along with the social media themes across the show. In this moment, I don't say that as a compliment, but referencing the large group dances meant to hype people up reminded me of the over-the-top Disney shows at the parks and on the cruise ships. I don't know if you've been to the Disney parks or if you've been on a Disney cruise, but you know how they say, oh, this is a family show, blah, 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 blah. When they say family, they really mean that it's for children. And maybe they'll say a little bit of some jokes that go over the children's heads. I don't catch on to that very easily. I miss it until later. But I mean, you can, they're catering to younger audiences nowadays, and I don't particularly like that, but maybe because I'm an adult. So, as I mentioned earlier, I actually think that the large stage prop hindered their performance. I don't know how they did it. It felt like they couldn't travel much, but the stage felt bare at the same time. And I think that just has to do with ballroom. I've never performed ballroom, although I think it would be really cool if we had the opportunity to try out Latin dance in like a dance setting, especially as an adult. I think that would be really cool to explore that a little more. And you know, I think that'd be fun. Like I said, I've already tried it, and I've tried cha-cha-cha, and I loved it when I was by myself, not with a partner. But I don't know what, like I genuinely couldn't, I can give you a theory, I could theorize like I did. I don't know why. I don't know how they managed to do that, but they did. I also observed that there was a representation of, and I mentioned this earlier too, there's a representation of ballroom styles, but they followed a pattern. So it would typically be some form of a group dance of a particular style, usually at least 4 or 5 people, and then it would become a duet of the same style, and then a brief placehold, and it would be either a skit or some kind of montage on that giant freaking prop with the TV screens. And I'm not saying that as a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying it's something I observed. It's up to you how you want to interpret it, but I actually don't think it's terrible that they did it that way, because I was able to very well determine, oh, this is a contemporary group dance. Okay, this duet style is contemporary. So actually, it's a good thing. I feel like it was a great introduction to the styles. And I think Val and Jenna's waltz transitioned very well into Riley and Alan's waltz. Listen, I might be wrong, but I thought that it was very cool that they did that. I mean, it was an observation, but now I'm looking at that as a good thing, that it's a great way to introduce the style and then see how it can be shaped into other things, if that makes sense. Yeah, so with that being said, I do want to reiterate that having Joey and Jenna there made a huge difference. A huge difference. One, the Pittsburgh environment was just wild. Why'd I put Pittsburgh? I meant Philadelphia. That was wild. Love Philly though. But with, I want to add that in because literally it was just the 2 of them that joined. And it already felt like there were so many more dancers to the point that I wasn't bored of seeing the same people over and over again. Like it really made a huge difference. Like every body matters. So that being said, I would like to make some suggestions for future shows. I know we're hitting the end here. I'm going to do my best to finish this out with before the hour is up. Some of my suggestions is having some of the original pros guest for a show or 2 and alternate. I think there should be celebrity guests I think there should be original pros coming in or a guest coming in for every single show. It would just make it more interesting, right? So the people that I think of, I don't know if they would, but the people I think of would be Cheryl, Max, Karina, Anna, Mark, Derek, Val, and Peta. And I know there were pros from this past season that opted out, but I do think they should be added to the rotation, like have Sasha come in, have Whitney come in. I know neither of those 2 were there. I don't remember the other ones that weren't there. Those 2 are the ones that stuck out to me the most. But let's cater to the people who've been watching forever, and let's bring someone in who we know super well. Like we know Emma. Having Jenna there made a world of a difference. And as I mentioned, her and Britt dance very well together. And then my other suggestion would be more mature comedic references. For example, like not just mentions of the old pros, for example, but I saw this video on YouTube where there was more humor / drama incorporated. And it was like a pre-scripted thing, right? So it was like a big screen and they were interviewing the pros, asking them like really juicy questions. And that was hilarious. I was laughing my butt off, but almost like games to play with the pros for our amusement that they obviously want to do because we care about dancer quality and such. But that's like I think that would just make it so much more fun for like the older audiences to kind of catch on to. Because that we love drama, especially the subreddit. All of Reddit loves drama, let's be honest. So my last portion of the show, and I'm going to try and get through this as quick as I possibly can, is the environment out. And if I don't have time, I'm going to make a separate recording. But I wanted to touch on the environment outside of the tour because there was a lot of drama. I'm going to mention two things. The absurd amount of postings of Daniela and Pasha's daughter on social media. That's one. And the tour buses. Now, I'm going to start with Daniela and Pasha's daughter. And I want to make abundantly clear I will not be using her name for privacy reasons. Even though her name's out there, I don't want to contribute to that. But there was a whole situation where apparently, like, I don't remember the whole story, but, like, they tried to bring her daughter into the audience and she got mobbed by a bunch of fans. People, and this kid's 2 or 1 or 2 years old. Like, how do you... And they also brought her on stage, and I've also seen fans posting pictures with this child. She's 2 years old. What are we doing? And this is the part where I'm like, okay, we are getting personal with their personalities. And I wanted to express my disappointment in Daniela and Pasha for not thinking of their daughter first. For example, like Daniela specifically was like, we love you guys so much. She made a statement. She was like, we love you guys so much, but here are the boundaries and, leave my child alone, essentially. There was a lot of, like, and the way people were fangirling over the child, I think that's what is, like, upsetting me about the whole thing, is that they saw a situation happened and that they didn't take their daughter off the internet immediately. Because if I had children and I posted them on social media, which would never happen, I wanted, like, they would be gone. Like, any sort of, they'd be locked in a safe. In, like, a protective, in a safe way. But they, they would have bodyguards and, like, seriously. Like, they would not be on the internet anymore, and I wouldn't allow them on the internet. So, there was a whole thing where there was a whole era where we were calling people out, or the pros out, for child exploitation on social media. And I do believe that's happening. I know that the word gets misconstrued at times. People often get mad because people get mad because people think that, exploitation, but it's not exploitation. But it is, because they're using their daughter for gain. They're using their daughter for views. And the entire tour was doing it too. Everybody was posting the kid as if she was the tour mascot, which I believe she was. Listen, I'm not saying, like, my take, and as you know, is that you need to, like, no children on the internet at all. It's not safe, etc. But I will say, if they didn't take advantage, if they didn't take advantage of the fact that she was giving them more views and kind of sucking her into it, then I would be a little more like, yeah, okay. But once things got parasocial, I think that took it too far. So I wanted to point that out. But I also wanted to talk about the tour buses. That was the other thing. So after every tour, there was this thing, I guess is the better word for it. But essentially, kids, like, the pros went onto I can't word things right. The pros would basically come up to the fans after the show. The fans would meet them at the tour buses. The fans, the pros loved it. They would post about it on social media, yada, yada, yada. And this was an unpaid thing. This was not something the pros had to do. It was something that they chose to do because they care about their fans. That being said, there were multiple days where the pros were not able to cater, they weren't able to. Like, for example, the Philly show that I attended, due to safety reasons, the pros couldn't come out. And oh my gosh, the security was telling people to step back. And granted, I actually did participate because I was just curious and seeing what it was about. But the moment the pro said, or the moment the security mentioned, hey, you need to step back, the pros aren't here, they aren't coming to see you today. People on Reddit got mad about it. And I'm like, if you want to see the pros so bad, you need to pay extra. That's just how, unfortunately, that's how capitalism works. You know what I mean? So I'm pointing that out because, let's not. And it was disappointing, yeah. But also, this just is a part of life. I didn't pay extra to wait at a tour bus to see the fans. Or not to see the pros, if that makes sense. So that is another thing I wanted to address too, is that we should be grateful that the pros were even willing to come see us and take pictures to begin with. We really should. They did not have to do that. They could have gone on the bus and slept. I know I would have. I wouldn't have come and said hi because I'm an introvert and it'd be like that sometimes. And I don't want to be mobbed. But that's all I wanted to say on that. Now, this is the end of the podcast episode, but I just want to talk with all the criticism that I provided. I do want to say that when I left the show, on both days, I had a huge smile on my face. I loved it. I was so happy. I was in my Dancing with the Stars phase, so I was like tripping out. Not actually, but I was so freaking happy. And it was such a good show. And that was like my whole mentality aside from it. That's why I'm saying I'm speaking as a critic, not as a fan. Because as a fan, I would have been like, everything's perfect. Everything's great. I loved every second of it. But, I wanted to talk from a critic standpoint, not from a fan standpoint. So that's where all that feedback is coming from. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your understanding in this break that I had to take. Hopefully I can get myself back on a schedule. Until I get myself sorted out, I don't know how consistent I will be, but I will do the best I possibly can. So that being said, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care of yourself. Take care of your loved ones. Take care of the people around you. I hope to, I guess, hear you all soon. Or not here. But I look forward to the next time you listen in. Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching this episode of Dissecting Dance, Kicking It with Ren podcast. If you can hear the wonderful background music, those are water bottles. This is your sign that you should relax and drink some water. Anyways, a new episode will be uploaded every other Thursday. Thank you for watching.